James Moore. You're listening to solar-powered KRUU-FM. We're broadcasting right here from the Cultural District's radio station, the KRUU-FM. I see the train going by as we speak. Too bad you can't get that visual. Just over the, right shoulder of Jason Strong, Fairfield Media Center in the house. We have Michael Halley joining us from the City Council halls. He's the fourth Ward City Council person. We'll put it that way. Let's be frank and correct in our assessments here. And we bring you the haps of City Hall after each session the following Tuesday, lunchtime, and then Thursday, dinner time, followed by the Monday, hence 6:30 a.m. breakfast time. Michael, how you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Well, good to see you. What's happening at City Hall?
All right. It's an informal review of our regular council meeting from November 23rd, 2015. We had one appearance. It was actually our Fire Chief Code Enforcement Officer, Scott Vaughn, on behalf of the Lions Club, requesting to block off the parking spaces on the south side of Central Park for this Friday, the 26th of November, for the carriage rides that are done in conjunction with the lighting up of the holiday decorations on Central Park. So the Chamber of Commerce has a little event before somebody very special gets to flip the switch. This happens around 5 o'clock, I believe, on Friday. And then once the lights are on, Santa will come. He'll be in his little house for all the little kids and little kids at heart to visit. And the carriage rides will take place. So council approved the parking stalls on the south side of Central Park to be blocked off. That's where the carriage loads and unloads the passengers. Alrighty, the next item, this has to do with also our schedule, was setting one city council meeting in December. This is our tradition. Instead of the second and fourth Monday in December, we generally do split the difference. We do the third Monday. So this year that falls on December 21st. So our one regular city council meeting in December will be on the 21st, 7 o'clock, City Hall, regular time, just a different date. Meaning our next city business won't be for 3 weeks instead of our regular 2. And we'll just have that one
gap.
Yep. A little extra time. All right. We had a series of, first a presentation followed by some actions. Travis Squires, who's the city's finance advisor. He works for Piper Jaffray out of Des Moines. Was down visiting. It's always a pleasure to see Travis. He's a very articulate, intelligent young man who just has a way of putting the city finances in, I believe, relatively easy to understand. You still have to have some background in it and understand how some of the funds work. But what he presented was moving forward on step one of the wastewater improvement projects. I talked about this before. The USDA grant requires that we borrow the balance of the total amount for the project, also from the USDA. But luckily for the city, it's at a very low interest rate, 2.1 over 40 years, which is, you couldn't find that out in the market. But the city has to borrow to actually complete the work of the project. Similarly to if you were building a home, there would be a construction loan to build, and once complete, it would roll over into a mortgage. Just like that, the city has to complete the work in step one. Mm-hmm. Once it's complete, we then can get the USDA grant and the balance on the loan, the low interest loan. So for the interim financing, we're going out to letting $4,600,000, rounding up a little bit, sewer revenue capital loans. So these go out to anybody who's interested in buying them. For the record, just to clarify, because these are sewer revenue capital loans, they have nothing to do with our bond rating. Our bond ratings for general obligation.
Okay,
We're
different.
Different use, different funds. So we've got time to get that bond rating back up before we have any plans to borrow general obligation bonds. Actually, I can't think of any reason off the top of my head why we would. Maybe some street improvement down the road, something like that. But
sorry, did you say street improvement down the road?
I did. I didn't even mean to. Yep, gotta put that cymbal crash in there. Alrighty, so after hearing from Travis, the good news is what we expected, which was because we got $2.6 million grant that we weren't expecting for phase one.
Excellent.
For step one. The rate increase schedule that we've been on for a number of years, it appears that we don't need to follow through on it. So it was supposed to be continually 6% increase every 6 months for, I believe, 3 more years. And tentatively, it looks as if we can do 9% increase next year. And then from there, only increase as inflation, to keep up with inflation, which would be excellent, which is the big sigh of relief when we found out we were eligible for grants, was that we don't need to raise rates as severely as we had feared. So the next phase that we're applying for grants is the $22 million plant upgrade. So step one was a mere 6.4, something like that, between 6 and 7 million. The plant upgrade's 22, but it is eligible for the same percentage as all of our projects, which is 50% potential grant funding. I believe it's 50. I don't think it's more than that. But each time it's a different situation, so we don't know what we'll get, but we're really hoping we get a good portion for that as well.
Is there a time frame for that?
I believe next year we'll hear back on that, and I think we applied from step 2 around the same time. Step 1, step 2, and the plant. Step 3 is still in the design phase. So step 1 really deals with the main lines that go around from Lamson Woods to the plant, and then the plant upgrades are not considered a step; they're separate. And then step 2 is Lamson Woods north, curving around, following essentially Crow Creek, so we get around campus area. So I don't have a map to show, but there's interesting the way that the sewer lines were put in. They kind of follow that path along Crow Creek and then down into the plant. And then 3 will be basically spreading out into the rest of the city. But those 1 will take care of a lot of the issues with the overflows, because there's a real bottleneck right now. The system wasn't built for the amount of people using it right now. So it overflows whenever there's heavy rain around Lamson Woods, around the country club golf course. The grass is really green though, which is interesting.
Yeah, this year it stayed green through.
We joke about that they're actually getting, in some cases, they're getting some nutrients from the overflow. But all right, so we move forward.
Okay.
We had to have an engagement letter for Piper Jaffray to put these out, a form of term sheet that shows how the payback will work. So that's a lot what Travis was talking about, was the payback schedule and how that affects that specific fund, because the borrowing is for sewer fund, and so the payback is from the sewer fund. And he said one reason that we may have been successful in getting that grant, and maybe in getting others, is because we had already done some rate increases. The USDA looks at that and says, okay, you have the revenue necessary to pay back the loan portion. So then they trust us to be good to go. And that's, we didn't plan that. That just happened that way. Mm-hmm. So we can't pat ourselves on the back too much, but we could feel a little bit lucky. So essentially it feels like we kind of dodged a bullet of really raising. People were already complaining about the sewer rate. Mm-hmm. If it had gone up even more, people really...
Well, 9% is still pretty significant.
Yeah.
But that it's only 1 year now you're looking at.
12 and 12.
Right.
You're getting massive
right
at the end of that 3 years. So more on that as it unfolds. Another little thing related to wastewater is that the city needed to purchase a property just west of the current plant because it's going to be an expanded area for a lagoon.
Right.
And the address is 2257 Marigold Boulevard. We were going to use the house as like firefighter training and then just move it off. But two different people came to the city and said they might be interested in buying it and moving it.
Okay.
So we're putting set a public hearing to sell that real estate, just the house, and then whoever buys it would be responsible for moving it in time for our project, so by next spring. So we hope to get a little bit of something out of, something we spent money to buy, didn't consider had any value, but that's great that someone saw it. I mean, it's also efficient if somebody can reuse a house.
Absolutely, and probably get an okay price.
Yeah, so we'll know. We might have to have a special meeting between now and that 21st meeting to deal with this and some other little things. So we'll see. But I'll have a report by the next time we do this.
Excellent.
Kirkwood Avenue project will start next year. That's just finishing paving from about 7th to 9th. So that's the last little segment. And it's 80% federally funded. And they're going to take out some trees, which is sad. But our policy that we put in place 5 years ago maybe, it was 2010, we put this in place, was if the city's street project came in and took out the trees in front of someone's house, that we would offer them replacements at our cost and just put it as part of the cost of the project in most cases. And, it's a minuscule amount compared to the actual cost, but it's the least we could do when, because a lot of people, like if someone took the oak in front of my house, it would be...
Makes a difference.
Such a difference.
Yep.
I mean, that tree is shades and just is so nice to have there. But I understand it's not mine. I understand it's public. But I would miss it if it were gone. Alrighty. Walton Club is another example of a private nonprofit that uses city land essentially for free in exchange for maintaining the land and the property.
So like the convention center.
Like the convention center, like the Carnegie Old Library. So we lease it $1 a year. And so they have to maintain the clubhouse and they have to keep the grounds in order and keep it open to the public for what it's used for, golf and socializing. So we renewed their lease for the next 10 years. Interestingly, the woman in charge is Katie Anderson, who's going to be on the council starting after the new year. Right. So she was there.
Dual role. Yeah,
she's a candidate or a councilwoman-elect.
Interesting.
So she was there for the Walton, and it was pretty straightforward. Interestingly, that in the past, there weren't all these homes out there and such, and so the scope is smaller because they've sold some property, and now there are homes around there, and so the actual Walton jurisdiction is smaller than it used to be, but it still includes the golf and
there's some nice houses out there. It's a beautiful lay of the land, no question. By the way, you're listening to Michael Halley. This is James Moore, City Business. We're going giving you the latest from City Hall, what's happening, all the buzz from there. What else you got?
Well, we move forward on amending our the city's commercial, industrial, residential, urban revitalization plan. So in the past,
easy for you to say.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say. In the past, there were just certain areas that were considered part of this, and one of the amendments was to make the entire city eligible, meaning if you had a housing project you wanted to do anywhere, not just in one of these specified areas, you would be eligible for this program. And the program changed. It used to be 3 years, 100% abatement for any increase in property tax revenue. So let's say I had a property that I was paying $20,000 a year, but I improved the property and my new property tax would be $30,000. Well, for 3 years, I would get that $10,000 back, and then after that, it would go on the city's property tax roll.
And when you say that $10,000 back, you mean the taxes that you would pay on that?
Yeah, the difference between what it was before my improvements and after. At least the city's portion. We can't give back the county or anyone else, but city's portion. So we changed it from 3 to 10 years, specifically to help a project that, if it goes through, would really be a big boon for the city, which is the renovation of the old Broadway building, or the old Loudon building on Broadway Avenue, and turning into 41 or 2 or 3, low 40s, can't remember the exact number, senior housing units. So the plan required support from the city. We couldn't offer cash at this time, so we offered a little bit more attractive incentive in terms of the property tax abatement.
Obviously, they're talking about renovating and putting some money into it. Yeah,
and they're trying to get some state money because it's very hard these days to do it 100% privately. It's just to spend the money and then try to get it back out and rent. Almost all the developers are looking for these different incentives they can find, especially for rehab. So we couldn't just do it for one project. That's not the democratic way. So it's that way now for any project that's multi-residential. So 3 or more housing, or 3 more units per building is multi-residential housing. And anybody who's making a significant has to be at least a 10% improvement on the assessment. So you have to raise the assessed value at least 10%. Could be eligible for this. Now, the discussion was, is this too generous? I mean, it's pretty generous. Well, we can change it at some other time. It just requires the same process we went through. But what we did was, instead of doing the first reading at this meeting, the second at the next meeting, the third the next, we suspended the rules and passed it in one go, because the timing for this particular project, that they needed it sooner, and we saw it was not a controversial issue. It wasn't affecting anyone negatively. So we went ahead and passed it, and leaving that open, that if we get inundated and we find that we feel like it's somehow getting taken advantage of, we'll change it.
Obviously wouldn't change for these folks. Or
no, anybody who's in it from now until we changed it.
Or anybody who may be working with 3 units or more doing those kind of improvements. I'm not sure how many that's going to impinge upon, but if people were thinking about doing something like that, it'd be a good time.
It's a good time. It is. There are other incentives that can be used as well. Then we did a resolution that was needed as part of the application for this project for the state. And we already made the action, but they just wanted a resolution. Resolution just shows that, yes, everyone in the council heard about the project and supported it. I needed a resolution for a tree grant I was applying for. And some other times you need resolutions.
That means something physical, or just?
It's a piece of paper, and it just says, here, whereas, and it states something like, whereas the city supports new housing development, hereby resolve to support XYZ, and then has all the council members' yes and no votes and the date. So you hear a lot about this resolution or that resolution, so it's a somewhat binding document. We had a second reading on the alcohol server training ordinance. Surprisingly, I thought more businesses would have heard about it, but read about it in the paper, or gotten wind of it, and maybe there'd be somebody there to object. No one came to object. None of the council members have gotten phone calls. The city hasn't gotten
any of the businesses.
None of them. So I almost feel like we should contact them, just, let them know this thing is happening. May affect them in some way. I mean, will affect them in some way if they're not already doing training. It's still, maybe they heard, it's free training, so okay, that's fine. And but because it has those little fines, $100 the first year, $200 the second year. If I were a business, I'd want to know about it. So I may look into a way to alert them, just like directly send a letter and say, all right, third and final reading's coming up, December 21st. This is your chance to say something. I just don't like that feeling that somebody would miss their chance. People were contacting me after we took away one of the days for burning, because we'd voted on it not during burning season. I was like, wow, this is amazingly non-controversial. And then burning season opened and people were told, oh, you can't burn Wednesdays now. And then they're like, well, who changed that? Who changed that? And they're like, Michael Halley did. The people at City Hall were giving them my name and number. I'm like, all right, fine. So I get these calls from people. I say, come on, it's one day a week. And it's just trying to balance the needs of the people who can't go outside when there's smoke. And
well, it is something though about city business and community too. I mean, mostly we don't care. We just want our lives to go on the way they are. Whenever there's a change, then it's like, hey, when did that happen? And I've seen it, just from this perch over the years, how many times when it was announced 6 months before, but until it actually goes into effect or is announced or something, it's sort of just an idea. And some people just pay attention to different sources or not at all. And so it's one of those things you wonder, well, here's the paper, here's the radio, here's what more can you do? And everything's public, and
we try our best.
And again, we're all in our own worlds and doing what we're doing and busy, and so I think it's just part of the nature of the thing. If one can anticipate this is going to be more something, I guess it gets more traction early, but the ones that seem not very controversial, it's still somebody's going to complain after the fact. Wait a sec, what are you saying? I have to train my employees, else I get fined. When did this happen? Right.
Remember we talked about it? But people don't necessarily watch the council meetings on.
Well, I think it's TV. A good idea. There aren't that many establishments. We have a list of them all because we approve their liquor license more symbolically than anything. It's really done by the state, but we have a list. Right.
I think direct is better. I mean, it's partly why I do this. It's partly why I convinced the council to make a Facebook page for the city government. I feel like the more communication, the better. The more the more channels of communication. And not everybody reads the paper, and you know what? Just reading the paper or just one avenue isn't always going to get you 100%. I mean, there's always something lost in translation, something maybe not quite understood or conveyed. So there have been many misunderstandings from a simple article in the paper or whatnot. I'm sure if someone just listened to me, I know for a fact sometimes I think I've explained it well, but I didn't quite get it all.
It's the nature. I mean, to me, if it triggers people wanting to check more or what was that, then they can either contact their city official, or they can go and ask, or they can go to the website, or they can see if there have been articles. Or, I mean, FMC is actually...
it's all archived.
It's archived, and everything that's there has been, if you want to go back and look at it too. So they're really... It's not to say there's no excuse, but if something's there, it's about paying attention and getting those things out. So anyway, it's a fascinating thing about what we all do here.
It's like your car. You don't want to think about your engine and all that. It's running smoothly, great, and then it starts having trouble, and then suddenly it's got your attention.
That's right. The light goes on.
Yeah.
Oh, the oil. But anyway, good. It's a good point, and that's why we hope people will just sort of. It's good to stay abreast of things.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of action, but that's the engagement that our process requires. Is that there has to be some engagement.
And if you're in the habit of it, then things less likely to surprise you or feel like, hey, who did this? If you're on it. But again, I know we're all busy. I know these days we all seem to be juggling a lot.
I'll just put it this way: before I got on the city council, I tried to watch the city council meetings sometimes and
it's not always easy.
It's not always easy because even last night during Travis Squire's talk, he had a printout that we, the council members, could see, but it wasn't displayed anywhere. He just printed it out. And I know I've been in the audience listening, and you don't know what he's referring to, and it's easy just to kind of zone out.
But again, I'm only saying that then if there are things that are of interest to you, you're able to now, with archive shows and whatever, go to the part that's interesting to you.
Yep, that's true.
And whether just to sit through all or whatever, this is a chance to sort of get a taste of what happened
and then
here.
You can go
and of course, the Ledger has a report, and the city puts up the items each time or whatever.
The agenda, it's out there. I mean, that's what I'm going off of, is just what we did on our agenda. But you're right, FMC, if you go to Fairfield Media Center's YouTube page, all the council meetings are there, and you can just fast forward until you find the part that's pertinent. Good point. All right, so the mayor had a couple board and committee assignments. He had 2 members of the Park and Rec Board to renew their terms, and then Tom Thompson, because he's going to be on the council, had to step down from the airport committee. So they had to get a replacement for him. But that's just how things go. All right, my committee, the Environmental Franchise Utility Committee, met I don't have much time to talk about this. It's just this goofy thing where
just a minute or two.
There was a fiberglass light post in a certain neighborhood of town that was part of this FIDA development in the 90s. And they dressed up the neighborhood. They buried the utilities and they put in these nice fiberglass light posts. But Alliant doesn't keep those stock. They do wood everywhere else in town. So one of those posts is broken. Alliant says, can we just put wood up? Well, we're like, well, we just have to make sure that the neighborhood's happy with that, and maybe the neighbors want to pay the difference between wood and fiberglass to keep the look. So just this little funny little, chink in standard business. But I was joking with my fellow council members how this government moves slowly. But we were all saying, but that's the point. You want everyone to have input. You don't want to speed things through. So that's partly the slow moving aspect. Just a little issue that came up in public safety. If you're going to the city's compost site and you're traveling south on 20th to enter it, so you're on the road and you just feel like I'm just going to keep going right in,
mm-hmm.
you do need to yield to any traffic traveling west on 20th, on Jackson. So just like the standard rules of the road is you yield to traffic on the right.
Mm-hmm.
So that lane that goes into the compost site is considered a private lane. So the drivers don't have the right of way just to cut across the road. They have to wait for any traffic turning the corner. So the city is hoping to avoid having to put up another sign, like a yield sign. We hope that people just understand the rules of the road. But a gentleman has been having trouble. He's been traveling west on Jackson, and people are cutting in front of him to go into the compost. And it's an uncontrolled intersection at this point. It used to just be a corner.
Right.
But now that there's this other place to go, there could be some trouble. We just don't want any accidents. So that's a little public service announcement. And the final thing was the administrator put together a budget process timeline that just starts pretty soon. The department heads of all the city departments have to put together their preliminary budgets. And then Ways and Means Committee, their busy season comes up in January, February, March, when they have to put together a fiscal year budget. And once again, the budget that's always put together is balanced. The trick is staying on it. Some of the departments are better at it than others. So the ones that haven't historically been staying on budget, they just have to. Just have to do it. Whatever they have to do to balance it, it may require, I'd hate to say cutting services, but that might be what it takes. Just a little bit, just to bring, if you don't have the revenue, you got to bring down expenditures. That's a balanced budget.
Mm-hmm.
If revenue comes shortfall revenue, you can't just leave your expenditures. That's how you get deficits. So we just got to be strict about it. And, but yeah, some of the stuff, it's going to have to take a little bit more in-depth look just to get everything squared away. But I think we're 90% there. I think like with this new fiscal policy and all the things that we're doing now, we are well on our way to having balanced budgets as just standard. It won't be a big deal. It'll be like, oh yeah, of course it's balanced.
Well, I'm all for balance. I met it once, I think, in the early 70s, but I hope to find it again. I feel like I'm getting closer every day. So speaking of getting closer, you're out of here. Thank you for tuning in, Fairfield Media Center. Michael Halley, good to see you as always. Thanks for keeping us up to snuff.
My pleasure.
Jason Strong, speaking of balance, and I'm James Moore. We're out of here. Give us a little siesta. I'll give you a little ocho right here on Solar Powered KRUU-FM.